This podcast is brought to you by JLC PCB. Support Moore's Law Z by utilizing their $30 coupon below for a premium 6-layer PCB. And then it is also brought to you by CDKeyOffer.com. Use offer code BrokenSilicon to save 25% on all Microsoft software. And we'll talk about these sponsors more later. But for now, let's get on with the show. Welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom. I decided not to throw a hand grenade into the beginning of the episode once again, but I wanted to see your face again as you waited in anticipation. Is Tom going to make me think of something?
And I'm your host, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. I suppose that is what I just did. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
Good. It's beautiful outside. I mean, me and my girlfriend worked in the yard with Jessie. She was very helpful today in the yard, by the way, sitting there and chewing on a ball.
Did she jump over some objects? She likes doing that? Okay.
She did.
Well, that is very helpful.
I believe everybody, as a teaser, you'll probably see that in an ad that comes later in this podcast. So get ready for that. It's going to be crazy. But no, it's really nice outside. Pretty easygoing weekend. I assume it's the same where you are. What's the weather like there? It's like 60 degrees and sunny here.
Oh, it's nice out, but also all the snow's melting, so everything. It's that week-long period where everything is a swamp.
That's right. Again, why I moved to Tennessee. But let us kick this off with a reader mail from Sarcastro. It says, Tom and Dan and all of the MLID crew, congratulations on hitting 200,000 subscribers. I remember finding the channel when doing my first ever PC build in 2020. Listened to the backlog of Broken Silicon back then. Tom used to celebrate being 34th most popular tech podcast in Bosnia, Dubai, or Bhutan. My memory was Tobago. What was it?
Trinidad and Tobago.
We were like number one for like 3 months.
Have we ever brought up Bhutan before? I don't remember Bhutan.
I don't remember that. I think he just named 3 random places. So Get it right. Don't disrespect the fans.
And we're talking about Bosnia. What about Herzegovina? Come on, man.
Again, to disrespect our friends in Trinidad and Tobago. That's just terrible. But he says, I haven't written in for a while, but I wanted to pass along my congratulations for the ever-growing Moore's Law is Dead Head Gang. Also, just wanted to make sure the P.O. box is the same. The Sarcastro R&D group, these are the people that sent Dan an Atlas when he got lost driving once, has been diligently researching something for Dan. It is the same. I'm very happy, like I just said, where I live, where there is not snow melting right now. So that P.O. box probably won't change for a while. I also thought this was a good opening one. As a celebration one, because it is also episode 300, and we always forget to do anything special for any milestone we hit because we're always just focused on working, basically. And it's like, oh yeah, look at that, we accomplished something. All right, well, let's get back to work. But how does it feel to break off another hundo, Dan, hitting 300?
Feels good.
It feels good.
Which is me, not intentionally, but accidentally doing another Scott Aukerman reference.
Yes. I was thinking that as well, from you talking you two to me, which we highly recommend if you find an annoying sense of humor funny, which is basically what that show is, to be entirely honest. But I mean, it's funny though, too. I remember a week or so ago, whenever I hit 200,000, like watching the ticker get closer, and it was exciting every 1,000. And we're already past 201,000, I believe, probably close to 202 by the time this take comes out. And it's just funny. Like, I don't know what next, I'm just happy views are up. We continue to gain subscribers. The Patreon's starting to pop off a little bit again. And I don't know what to say about hitting 300 episodes or 200,000 or soon 202,000 subscribers. I think it's going to kind of be like, I think if we hit like 500 episodes, that will be when it feels very insane. Just like when we hit like 200.
Yeah, or 512 to keep in line with our original ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of celebrating every like 64-ish
episodes.
or something. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we hit 200,000 subscribers. We want to thank everyone who helped us get there. And this is also the 300th episode, which I never thought. I guess I won't say I didn't think we'd get somewhere, but it feels weird to realize we have gotten past 100, 200, and now 300 episodes. This is a proper podcast that's been going on for many years.
Yep, and give it another give it another 10 years and we'll beat 1,000 episodes or something.
I mean, we get to 1,000, that's going to be absurd. But
if we get to 1,000,
seems likely we
might.
will.
I mean, unless something happens, I don't know why we would.
I think we'll be doing this at least that long. I don't know if we'll be doing this for 30 years, but I can see us doing this another 10 years. I think we'll be here with you guys.
Who the hell knows?
As long as you keep supporting us. Just get really mad and ungrateful. All right. Let us now move on to corrections. Carbon Cry writes in and says, slight correction on the discussion of tariffs and broken Silicon 296. You mentioned how difficult moving production to Cambodia or Vietnam might be from China, including hiring issues. But this is the usual change of sourcing. What seems to be happening on the rise instead right now with these tariffs is the same Chinese companies are building new sites in Cambodia, and Vietnam's very unhappy. And then they ship workers from China to the new factory in Cambodia to get around tariffs. For the customer or an AIB, for example, they are still contracting the same Chinese company. They get the work done by the same workers, but everything is just moving to Cambodia. China's still making money. It's just increasing prices for consumers.
Well, I'm assuming moving an entire operation of like 200 miles or whatever south isn't. That doesn't cost much money, though, right?
Nope. And they, of course, will absorb all of the cost. Oh no, wait, they won't.
It's a charity.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point, Carver. That's hilarious, if not depressing. Compressed AI Blocks writes in and says, not so much a correction, but to add on about the physics being killed off and your point of Nvidia making a calculated decision to do it now. I think this might have flew under the radar in a timeline where people did not care about game preservation. That has been a major topic of discussion that might be making this bubble up, as we've seen articles recently stating things like 50%, or he says he's not sure of the exact number, but it's a large one, of games from before even just 2010 are no longer available for purchase. I think this is just another way to pull the rug out from gamers from a pure gamer consumer perspective. Yeah, I think this is less intentional to do that, but it is again like just one of those things where it's funny, where it's like, this is why consoles should exist at least, and you want them to have a disk drive, because at the end of the day, some of these games might just run best on an old PlayStation eventually, and having consoles that can work offline and have a set amount of hardware that doesn't get screwed over by Windows updates or graphics card updates over time is, I guess, useful if you actually want to be a preservationalist.
Yeah, I mean, though, physical media does at least to some extent preserve availability of any piece of media. Like, we've talked about that with movies a lot, how with like the rise of streaming, like, I think it's gone, but there was a brief period of time where like one of Mike Flanagan's movies just wasn't, you just didn't have a way to watch it anymore.
I mean, isn't that still true of Westworld?
I don't know where Westworld is right now. If no one has the rights to that, I'd be shocked, but I guess I haven't kept up with that either.
But yeah, I mean, and it's funny how like right when they're thinking of killing Blu-ray, physical media is starting to take off again. Apparently, like sales for Blu-rays are starting to go up pretty quickly because people are just like, if this is a TV show I'm going to watch multiple times, why not just go to, and you can get them. David was pointing this out on the last time he was on. You can get them pretty cheap on eBay, like used Blu-rays, and Blu-rays, of course, last much longer than DVDs do, let alone VHS. So I don't
think I've ever had a Blu-ray. Never mind. I think one of my Demon Souls discs had issues once.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't remember why. I just had to like clean it, but that's the only time I've ever had issues with a Blu-ray.
And you can clean it much more easily and without fear compared to DVD because it has a coating where you're not going to destroy it if you clean it.
Yeah. So, I hope Blu-ray doesn't die, even though I know it's I don't know. It's kind of on a knife's edge with demand. Like, how long will we keep supporting this for?
I think it'll probably stick around personally.
I mean, yeah, as long as there's a desire for it to exist, somebody's going to satiate it.
All right, let us move on now to the first story of today. RTX 5070 12GB reviewed and launched. Quoting first from Hardware Unboxed, then we'll quote from IGN and Tom's Hardware to get different perspectives. We are not impressed with the GeForce RTX 5070. It's a compromised product that struggles to fully utilize its RTX features due to a limited 12GB VRAM buffer. And while this may not be a major issue right now, although I'd chime in and say this already seems like a bigger issue than 8GB was for 3070 at launch.
Oh, I mean, it was an issue in reviews.
Like multiple games already revving.
Yeah.
This seems worse than the 3070, guys. It's likely to become one within the realistic lifespan of the product. In terms of general performance, there's nothing exciting here as well. The 5070 is essentially a refreshed 4070 Super with $50 knocked off the MSRP. It can occasionally compete with a 4070 Ti Super, but again, with just 12GB of VRAM, it's really not a favorable comparison. Now, here's IGN. Carbon Cry said, for a normie perspective, it would have been bad enough if the 5070 had single-digit improvements over the 4070 Super, but with so many games showing the new GPU being slower than its predecessor, it becomes really hard to see why anyone should buy it. The only reason you should get this is if you have an older graphics card and you don't have the cash to spend on a 5070 Ti, and even then, you're probably better just trying to find a 4070 Super for cheaper. Moving on to Tom's Hardware. We originally considered a somewhat favorable 4-star score, but after pondering market conditions and the lack of major advancements relative to the prior generation, we've elected to drop it down to 3.5. A 4-star would be fair if the card could actually be bought for $550, but you almost certainly won't be able to buy one for that price. So how do we score something that ultimately will just sell out? And when demand is so much higher than expected supply, it hardly even matters what we score it anyways. It's just going to sell, I guess. And so there you go. The new 4090 level of performance is here, people. Unsurprisingly, far from performing like that Lovelace flagship, it sometimes struggles to keep up with even a 4070 Super. Overall, that is what the 5070 is. It's a 4070 Super in raster, heavy ray tracing, and even in efficiency. Honestly, with GDDR7 and only roughly a 10% smaller die, it becomes questionable if this is even more economical to make for NVIDIA than a 4070 Super. Oh, and again, it isn't really here. As with the rest of the Blackwell gaming GPUs, the biggest issue isn't lackluster performance. It's NVIDIA's traditional skimping on VRAM or even fun quirks like burning power connectors and buggy drivers. No, the biggest problem is that you can't buy one. They don't exist. There's no supply. The Founders Edition didn't even get officially released yet. Despite NVIDIA forcing the day one reviews to be of a Founders Edition you couldn't buy on day one. So the 5070 launched, I guess, to different shrugs of underwhelmed reviews and sighs of those looking to buy one. All right, Dan, what do you think of the 5070?
I can't remember if I said this to you on the Die Shrink re-recorder or if this was something I said to you, well, just like talking on the phone. But yeah, I just remember seeing like NVIDIA put out, there might not be Founders Edition upon launch, and my thought was, then this isn't a launch. This is an extra super duper paper launch. Like, that's about it. And even with that perspective in mind, yeah, it's I don't know. I guess if they could sell it for $550 and it had decent stock and it actually sold for $550 or relative to wherever the 9070 and 9070 XT end up selling for, I guess it might be okay, but they don't exist. So I think that's the number one point, is this card doesn't exist. And even with its non-existence ignored, it's a pretty lackluster card.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much time we really need to spend on this one. I don't remember when this was leaked by us, but I remember I put out saying it's going to be lucky to even match the 4070 Super. Turns out that's true. And it's funny because I was told, I also leaked this behind the scenes, they were trying to compare it to a 4070 Ti.
Bad idea.
And it didn't even end up doing that with final drivers. On top of that, I just think, again, it's not just that it has low supply, people. There wasn't even a Founders Edition you could buy, despite that being the card that they made everyone review. And I'm told it had 27 times less supply than the 9070 XT. This thing is such vaporware. It's worse than the 3090 launch. It's crazy.
Didn't you say that the 5080 had like an eighth the supply of the 9070 launch?
That sounds right. Sounds right.
So I mean, this had like 4 times less than the not 4, 3 times less than the 5080.
Yeah.
What the hell are we doing? This is the 5060 to 5070. Like those cards are supposed to be the bulk thing that you sell, not the 5080. Like this is borderline vaporware. Like,
well, I believe you made this point in a recent die shrink, or maybe it was a recent broken silicon. But you said, why? Oh, no, it was the last die shrink. You said, if the supply is this low, like truly this low, why are you launching it? What is the point of calling this a launch? And that is my opinion. All this does is hurt NVIDIA's brand name. I don't get it. I don't get why they launched this card this way. They think they have to have it out. If the 5070 had 16 gigabytes of RAM, was $500 and the same performance as a 9070 XT, that would be why. Even if you can't buy it, they want you to know that we have a better product before AMD. You go buy AMD, but it's not better. It's just terrible. So I don't get it.
Yeah, because like if they had launched this as, I don't know, a 5060 Ti or something for $500,
or $450 or something.
Yeah, or even $500 with actual supply, this might have gotten okay reviews at least.
Yeah,
like,
I think it's all right.
This is just absurd. Like I don't know what else to call it other than like I don't know why Nvidia would launch this. It feels like they're intentionally shooting themselves in the foot. Like it's such a stupid idea to launch any product in this low stock unless it's like a super ultra Halo product, then whatever. But like this
right,
is
to take headlines, you just increased, like your performance rate or something.
Like, yeah, like something like the 5070, that should be the card that sells the, like, I don't know, 1 to 3rd most units of any card in a series. And this being the lowest volume launch just makes no sense. I don't get what NVIDIA is doing.
Jensen Wang, AI Bubble, writes in and says, from we are masters of the supply chain to we don't know what user would want to buy a GPU for to wait, missing ROPs. How can we further ensure we are safe from being sued over misleading what our GPUs are being bought for? What if Blackwell launching at all is to isolate NVIDIA from lawsuits, which would be tens of hundreds of billion? No, I don't know. Are they just launching them because they said they would? I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of that, but I don't really think that makes sense. You can launch one card and wait a while. The 7800 XT didn't launch for like a year.
And I don't know enough about, like, I don't know, fiduciary duty and whatnot that like this would open them to a lawsuit if they didn't launch this series, quote unquote, on time. I mean, if that's a big opening to a corporation, though, where are all the shareholders in Intel suing them? Because they seem to be falling way behind what NVIDIA is doing.
PRTDB and me writes in and says, at what point will we think that NVIDIA ray tracing, as seen in Black Myth Wukong and Alan Wake 2, is like PhysX, where it's so unoptimized and runs such like shit, but it runs slightly less like shit on NVIDIA's hardware to the point that technology is really just a cudgel to beat AMD? I don't think people will look at it the same way, even though you can certainly make that argument.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we'll see how ray tracing evolves over the next like 5 years or so. Like, there are games that are just meant to showcase ray tracing, and yeah, maybe they're less optimized on AMD, but I don't know. They're meant to showcase how much stronger NVIDIA is, and yeah, a few of those exist.
Well, and like you said, we'll see where this goes. I mean, at the end of the day, why is Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition run so well? Although it doesn't run bad on AMD, on NVIDIA, it's like, well, AMD didn't even, I think, have an option for it when that Enhanced Edition came out. And Alan Wake 2 is, of course, if they want to focus on ray tracing for their graphics for that game, they're going to focus on the cards that can do it better, and that is NVIDIA. Now, moving forward, if this keeps happening, and it's just like, I don't know what an example would be, of like another, like, I don't know, The Last of Us Part 3 in a few years or something is on PC and it has ray tracing and it runs well on everything. And then NVIDIA launches Alan Wake, NVIDIA, Freudian slip, NVIDIA. And then Alan Wake 3 is launched with NVIDIA support and it runs like a half the frame rate on AMD. I do think people will start saying that. But I think that's when people will.
Yeah. I mean, if AMD has truly caught up in ray tracing performance, which I could see that in the next couple generation or two, and you still see these weird discrepancies, sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of AMD, let us now move on from this horrible GPU launch to one that was actually all right. With the RX 9070, 9070 XT reviewed and launched. This is story number 2. Tom's Hardware will quote first. The AMD Radeon RX 9070 XT and 9070 represent a big step forward in several big areas for AMD. They have significantly improved ray tracing performance to the point where the 9070 XT easily beats even the 5070 and comes pretty close to a 5070 Ti. There's also new and improved AI hardware that's not quite as fast as what Nvidia offers, but it should provide some substantial improvements to a variety of workloads. Quoting now from Hardware Unboxed. Now, setting aside the fact that the 9070 XT is an obvious choice right now, let's pretend that option doesn't exist and make a straight RX 9070 versus 5070 battle. Who wins there? Well, in terms of value, the 9070 offers 8% better frames per raster performance. However, for ray tracing heavy workloads, the 5070 is on average 16% faster, assuming you don't exceed the 12 gigabyte VRAM buffer, by the way, as happened in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. So it does happen. The memory limitations of the 5070, we feel, will likely become the bigger issue in the future, raising concerns about its long-term viability compared to the 9070. So here we are. After the 5070 was met mainly with indifference to raw anger, AMD's 9070 and 9070 XT took more of a spotlight this week, predictably. AMD's launch delay worked out great, in fact. It gave Nvidia enough time to kill all Blackwell hype, shoot themselves in the foot a few times, and move the attention to RDNA 4. Even Hardware Unboxed, who got worse numbers than most reviewers, has been overall positive on RDNA 4. Although, predictably, the non-XT variant is a different story, with many reviewers noting worse performance per dollar at MSRP, although there are exceptions, with Gamers Nexus praising the card for its efficiency. Yeah, apparently Kit Guru did too, and found it's the most efficient card on the market, apparently. It says, and we were right on our performance expectations and leaks, by the way, here at Moore's Law is Dead. The 9070 XT trades blows with the 5070 Ti. Well, yes, losing in ray tracing. The 9070 beats the 5070 everywhere except very heavily ray traced titles like Black Myth Wukong. You have to remember, those types of games are dragging down the averages for the 9070. And again, in those games, if you turn up too many features, though, it runs out of VRAM. Additionally, the cards seem to be an excellent overclockers and undervolters. Apparently, this was interesting. The 9070 can be undervolted and overclocked to trade blows with a 9070 XT, drawing comparisons to Vega 56. Well, the XT seems to be running at significantly higher voltage than needed. Again, drawing comparisons to Vega 64. Again, freeing up space for efficiency gains if you undervolt it, and possibly getting solidly ahead of a 5070 Ti and raster if you undervolt and overclock it, like you seem to have to do with all AMD cards. It's time immemorial. The last metric AMD needed to hit, though, was supply, and they managed to do so. Not in all markets, not at all retailers, okay, but there has been significant launch stock. The cards still sold out, though, of course, showing just how strong and pent-up demand for GPUs are. This feels like an Ampere RDNA 2 scenario again. There's uncommonly strong demand while supply suffers from logistical issues. The difference is Nvidia seems uninterested in the GPU market now, but AMD at least isn't following their lead in that department. All right, damn. This was the most exciting GPU launch I've seen in a couple of years here, I'd say, since the 4090. I mean, what'd you think?
9070 XT obviously should be the card everybody's looking for right now, or at least the card, if you could get it 3 days ago, that you should have been buying because, it offers the best value on the market and the only card that really moved the needle at all. Like the 5070, you might as well have just bought a 4070 Super a year ago.
Or war. I mean, God.
Yeah. The 97 XT, though, launched in good volume, offered significantly better price performance than pretty much any of NVIDIA's offerings, and I think really brought a lot of the software features or a lot of the, I should just say non-raster features that NVIDIA had of an advantage on close to parity to what Nvidia had. So I don't know. I know this is just one data point, but if this is signaling a trend from AMD, I think AMD is going to be very has a lot of potential over the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's funny because I know that there are these bullshit rumors spread by mostly bullshit channels, I would say, that AMD was going to leave graphics cards like in 2024. And here we are. It seems quite the opposite of that, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Like if AMD can, I mean, I think AMD has a really good chance of taking a lot of market share this generation if they can keep supply up like they've completely trounced Nvidia in supply this time around.
Now, an issue, though, is I don't know how many they commissioned to be made. It's a lot.
Sure.
But if they want to order more stock, and I hope they are, or increasing production, they want to increase production, we're not going to see that for 6 months. But from what I'm hearing, supply is not expected to be good for Blackwell all year. So I think even if it takes 6 months, it would behoove them to produce as many of these freaking things as they can. This is it. This is your chance.
Yeah. And the one thing that I'm not sure about is I think there's a massive hand grenade that's about to be thrown into pricing, and I'm not sure where everything is going to land yet. So
true.
I do want to see where things end up landing in the next couple weeks to couple months. Like, how expensive does everything get? Does a 9070 XT end up being, or 9070 end up more or less being functionally the same price as a 5070? Because the 9070 XT was really well reviewed, but the 9070 is, I think, a bit more meh at the at MSRP pricing. But that all depends on like how things shake up.
But
I
if
could
the
see
average, right?
I could see the maybe the 5070 shoots to $900, the 9070 XT shoots to $850, and the 9070 shoots to like 800 or 700.
But if it
something.
stays below 700, it's like, oh yeah, save the money. Apparently, if you tweak it like Vega 56, it'll be almost the same performance.
Yeah, so like the 9070 and actual street pricing could end up being the value king. Mm-hmm. I could easily see that. Where, yeah, at MSRP, the 9070 is kind of uncompelling, aside from efficiency, I guess. But I think that's kind of AMD's intention. Is I think the 9070 XT will be less anchored by the MSRP than the 9070.
Yeah, and I think what I will say is I think if AMD does spin up production here for even more RDNA 4, I think it's obvious the focus will be on the higher end models. Like I am hearing still, I leaked this. When did I do this? Oh, it would have been in that last video I did covering the launch. Like I am being told here that there is an ultimate edition of the 9070 being worked on for next quarter. Mm-hmm. And I think the focus will be on, well, if tariffs are up, can we add $50 worth of components and make this thing compete with a 5080? If they can manage to do that, or even get remotely close to it, then I think that will be what they try to do. And then for market share, though, I just hope they're going to make a ton of Navi 44 as well.
Oh, yeah. Because, yeah, the 9060 or 9060 XTs, whatever they call them, could be insane value.
This piece of content is brought to you by JLC PCB, provides easy, affordable, and reliable PCB and PCBA solutions, empowering electronics engineers to develop projects efficiently. The core advantages of why you'd want to work with JLC PCB come down to three things. Number one, it's very easy to work with them in order. You can upload your Gerber file to get instant quotes and order in minutes. It's as easy as shopping online on a normal retailer's website. And also, they're affordable. You can get 1 to 8 layer PCBs for just $2 for efficient large-scale production, reducing costs and bringing you unbeatable prices overall. And then number three, they are reliable, they have quality, they have sustainable and consistent lead times, and it's all in-house production, ensuring quality, stability, and strict quality control in every process. Furthermore, they have rapid turnaround with lightning-fast PCB production in just 24 hours. And also, the RP2350 launched on JLC PCB. Raspberry Pi is partnered with them, enabling seamless integration of RP2350 chips into your designs. By choosing JLC PCB, you're getting access to high-quality PCBA assembly services designed to accelerate your RP2350-based product development. And furthermore, you get $30 off with a coupon and enjoy top-quality 6-layer PCBs for just $5 plus 2U ENIG finish and no engineering fees for via InPad. And so, go to the link in the description, click on that link, use any coupons below that are provided, and you will be supporting Moore's Law is Dead and also getting a great product from JLC PCB. Jensen Wang writes in and says, with RDNA 4 seeming to scale well with power up and down the stack, is the real secret to market share a $400 16 gigabyte Navi 44 with a 200 watt plus TDP so it gets as powerful as possible? As long as it's actually scaling performance, yes. I mean, I think the 7700 XT launched for $450, had only 12 gigs of RAM. If AMD can give us that level of performance below $400 with 16 gigabytes of RAM, there's your uplift in us. Like, this is what people wanted in that price bracket for a long time. And I would say that is going to be the key, is can you make 2 of those for every Navi 48 and still hit good 1440p 144 hertz performance? I think that's what a lot of people would buy. I will say, though, that I still think they need to, if they don't, because there's no 6 nanometer model to my knowledge. So they need to do something with Navi 33 if they want to take market share right now. Like, no one can get anything. Overclock it, use faster memory, and make the 7600 XT a 9050 XT 16 gigabyte for $299 AMD. Like, 5-10% faster, while giving you 10% lower MSRP than previous gen, and then just launch that with FSR 4 support coming to RDNA 3. I mean, that's what's going to gain market share, because that's where you can make as many as you want.
And call it the 7650 Golden Rabbit Edition.
Well, speaking of the, do I have a comment here for that one there? Yes. Probably. Jensen Wang also writes in on this. Always the serious topics with him.
Similar wavelength with me.
Should AMD replace RX with GRE? Doesn't everyone want to buy a Radeon Edition 9070?
Yes.
But I mean, I think we've acknowledged this a little bit before, but let me say it again. It is hilarious that they're keeping the GRE branding, and now they're just calling it the Great Radeon Edition, because apparently if you put GRE on something in China, it sells better. And they're like, we're not getting rid of this. It's just hilarious.
I guess that's an accidental brand they stumbled across. The GRE is the year of the Golden Rabbit will never die.
It will never die.
At least not on AMD.
No. Techno writes in, with the 9070 XT likely having yields that can beat the 5080, I think it's more complicated than that. And AIB models especially, do you think the 32 gigabyte variant, well, I don't know that they're going to have that, is likely going to be priced at $1,000 because it would have equal or better than 5080 performance and twice the VRAM? What I will say is, and I told you some of it the other night, Dan, I have heard things about this Ultimate Edition that are bonkers. And I'm not going to say what they are now. I think I might hear about them over the next week, hopefully. And I'm not saying them because until I get more corroboration on this, I would sound like a madman to tell you what I've heard it could be. But from what it sounds like, it still seems like the focus will be at 16 gigabytes. But if what I'm hearing about what the performance they're aiming for is true, first of all, I just want to see if they can pull it off. But if that's true, I think, yeah, if it had 32 gigabytes, they're going to charge as much as the 5080. Right, Dan? I mean, come on.
I mean, yeah, this is just me speculating. But like, if they could squeeze like another 10% performance out of Navi 48 and give that 32 gigabytes of RAM, sure, I think they could probably sell that for, I don't know if it's $1,000. You probably need to go with like 900 or something.
I think $799 for the 16 gigabyte. Again, people, we're saying something at $799. That's 20% cheaper than the 5080. Yeah, and
I'm rampantly speculating right now.
Now, if they could beat the 5080 and it has 32 gigabytes, yeah, I mean, they're going to charge $999. And why would they not?
I would just be worried if they really tried to get it all the way to a 5080's level of performance. That thing would be using like 600 watts or something, though.
So I'm sorry, we're in a world so the same as the freaking 5090 you can't buy.
True.
I mean, if it beats the 5080, that would put it near a 4090. We're in a world where this is just what people do now, I guess. So.
I'll amend that. If they could get to 600 watts, 32 gigabytes, and it beats the 5080 outright, doesn't quite get to a 5090, but beats a 5080 outright, sure, go for it.
Mm-hmm. Cyber Cookie writes in, "Hey Tom and Dan, loving the new direction AMD is taking with their GPU line, as they are aiming for the more medium and low-end consumers. However, I do feel a 20 gigabyte card would have been possible, sure, and would, in my opinion, be the card I'd be interested most in instead of a GPU with 16. Have you heard anything about a possible bump in RAM for any upcoming models?" And that's the thing, I haven't. I don't think they should even officially launch 32 gigabyte cards. I think just with the Ultimate Edition, they should tell AIBs, give it 32 if you want to. But that's my opinion. I put out a video suggesting they should do that. Nobody has told me it will have 16 gigabytes behind the scenes. I have to be very clear about that.
Yeah, like if there was a 9070 XT Toxic Edition. Great idea for what we're speculating about.
Yeah, but again, it is speculation. Big Jeff B writes in, says, "Tom, I'm just telling you now, and I know you're not, and I know you may disagree." Okay, so he's saying I'm not a fanboy. "This video tonight, it was my 9070 XT analysis, is why some people call you an AMD fanboy. At no point in that video did you ever say anything close to bad about AMD or anything without immediately saying, well, Nvidia is worse. Well, there is going to be tariffs excuse. That's a fact. That's a problem. That is making things, it's not an excuse. It's an explanation of reality. You can choose to ignore reality and pretend these aren't things that are going to hurt prices, but they are, and they're real tangible things. This isn't an excuse for AMD. Everyone was saying 549 MSRP was the number, not me. And AMD isn't hitting it. Tom's leaks and info suggested 549. Nope, said 500 to 600. And 600 I thought was fair. I publicly said that after I saw the final performance. I'm like, oh, this is near the top of the performance. It's be six. It can not should. It can fairly be 600. Yes. Yeah. Yet they set 599. Most of the cards won't be, by your own admission. Right. I broke that story. This is AMD saying we don't give a shit about market share. Well, they sold out. And we want X% on every card sold. They do want to not go out of business like Intel. If they are giving rebates that make it worse because they are planning on higher, well, they know they can't sustainably keep that price lower if tariffs happen. Don't defend AMD and be honest. All they care about is how much per graphics card they sell. They don't care about market share. No, that's not true, or they wouldn't have. If they didn't care about market share, why'd they ship 27 times the supply of the 5070? That doesn't make sense. I'm sorry the video hit a nerve in me, I guess. That seems very clear. I'm going to skip some of this other stuff because I don't know where this is coming from. So let's say this. Big Jeff, thank you for writing in, but I am the one who broke the story on the MSRP rebate. If I was going to defend AMD, why would I warn you their MSRPs were somewhat fake? I wouldn't have told you that. I did that to help you all make informed decisions. Furthermore, I don't know where you got half your stuff. I never said $549. Other people are free to their own opinions, but I always thought it was going to be $500.
We hoped for $549.
Once I saw the final performance, I'm like, this card's aiming a bit higher, or it at least achieved higher than expected. And anyways, though, you can have that opinion if you want, but that was not my opinion. And you know what, by the way, because there's some point here where he says that they are not 30% cheaper. Last time I checked, $700 is 30% less than $1,000, which is what you can go buy the 5070 Ti for if you think that's fair. Now, did I just compare AMD to Nvidia and say AMD is less bad than Nvidia? Yes. Of course I fucking did, because that's who they compete with. Should I be comparing AMD's business practices to Pringles? They're competing with Nvidia. If Nvidia is worse and AMD's not perfect, of course I'm going to compare them to their competitor. What else am I going to compare them to? And by the way, I have to say this too. People who call me an AMD fanboy, it's because they don't have anything to say. If they had something of substance to say, they would disagree with something I'm saying. They wouldn't call me a fanboy. A fanboy is what real fanboys call people when they want to cry and have nothing of substance. So call me that if you want, but the fact that people call Hardware Unboxed on Reddit AMD Unboxed, when they are often incredibly critical of AMD, tells me that everyone's called a fanboy. And you know who calls them that? The actual fanboys call people fanboys. And so one more thing here. I'm recording this on a 4090. You know why? Because it's a fantastic graphics card that I recommended. And you know why there's not a 5090? Because the 5090 fucking sucks, and I'm not going to buy it, and I'm not going to tell you to buy it. Call me a fanboy for saying that if you want, but it is a bad card, and what AMD launched is better than their competition, which is what I will compare them to.
Yeah, and like, just to put that into perspective, like, because you brought up Hardware Unboxed, that they've been talking about, they adjust their recommendation to like Nvidia needs to offer 15% better frames at the same price now,
or AMD does.
Yeah, sorry, Jesus. Yeah. So what that functionally means is if AMD is charging $400 for a card, they would recommend you buy a card for $460 from Nvidia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's showing and I'm not saying it's improper favoritism towards Nvidia, but it's like that is showing an amount of favoritism. They're saying Nvidia warrants a higher price tag. That's fine.
And by the way, me and you have said like 10% is ours,
yeah,
but that's our opinion. 10 to 20%. It depends. I really don't think there's a clear rule. I think
there shouldn't be a blanket. Yeah.
But I think for them to take market share, it needs to be I think 20% can work, but 30% is clearly better value. $700 is 30% less than $1,000. That is the world we live in, people. A real world where there are tariffs that are making these expensive. Well, and one company isn't making cards.
And I will say, there's always when new product launches happen, because we talk about things before they happen, or before they're official, I should say. There's always an amount of nervousness for me when a product launches, and then once I see the whatever unveiled, I'm like, good, that worked out. And when I saw $600 for the 9070 XT, I was like, oh, that worked out. That's around where I was hoping. And I was a bit disappointed by the 9070's price.
Yeah.
Not hugely disappointed, but I've said that multiple times at this point. Mm-hmm. So like, I was hoping for like $500 for the 9070.
And by the way, when it comes to the exact pricing and supply of this, there's a whole 1 hour die shrink that came out with a Micro Center employee interview included in it as well, where we go deep into what we think about the pricing difference and like why you might justify it or not. So that's there if you join the Patreon at the lowest tier. But go on.
Oh, I mean, I don't have much else to offer other than like, this isn't just constantly recalibrating my thoughts. It's just when I saw $600, my thought was, oh, that's basically what we were talking about. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I don't think there's a bunch of rampant AMD fanboyism beyond. I think they generally offer better value right now.
Yeah, and it's like $700 is better value than $1,000.
And you know, it's also
why
better.
Why do I have to pretend that's not true? That is true. It just sucks that it's 700. But we were the ones telling everyone not to support price hikes for years, and that didn't go anywhere. So now we're going to do is report the news. The news is this is a better product. Get it now before prices keep going up for a bunch of, again, not excuses, real reasons, and one of them are tariffs.
Yeah, and the other thing that's better, 7 cards versus 200 cards, because that's the supply differential.
Yeah, I know. It's just ridiculous. All right, I'm actually excited to move on to this next story here, because I really didn't focus on this that much in my initial analysis, but it's a pretty big story. FSR 4 tested, quoting Hardware Unboxed and then Digital Foundry. FSR 4 is usable, and not just barely usable, but like really very usable now. What was most impressive is that FSR 4 image quality generally sits somewhere between DLSS 3 and DLSS 4, given that many gamers felt DLSS 3 was good enough for even using in 1440p regularly. Matching and even exceeding that level of quality is a huge win for FSR 4. I think in most cases, FSR 4 will meet your requirements for image quality using either the quality or honestly even balanced modes, and you'll have a pleasant experience doing so. This has significantly narrowed the gap in upscaling between AMD and Nvidia at 1440p. Now, Digital Foundry AMD is technically still behind on image reconstruction, but they have made an immense advancement here with RDNA 4 and FSR 4. You're going to have great image quality on an AMD GPU, absolutely obliterating FSR 3, and it is to boot better than the previous versions of DLSS as well. This is an amazingly positive development. So yeah, there you go. The Radeon positivity did not stop with the GPUs themselves. FSR 4, the long-awaited AI upscaling from AMD, has been a big hit. The consensus is that FSR 4 beats DLSS 3 and comes close to DLSS 4. Even in stills, the advantage of DLSS 4 is a sharper look to the details, although sometimes perhaps even over-sharpened. However, generally speaking, if it is over sharpen, it does seem people prefer the sharper look at a minimum, though it is questionable if it even is reconstructed more detail, just having a higher sharpening filter there. Additionally, launch availability of FSR 4 seems good. Yeah, I was surprised how many games are getting support for this so quickly. And AMD is also including a driver toggle to switch FSR 3.1 to 4 in games that only have the former already. So with good quality, decent support, when will older GPUs get it though? That is a question now that people keep arguing online, and it might be difficult to achieve. You see, RDNA 4 has matrix units that are fundamentally kind of the same as tensor cores, Karma Cry says. No other RDNA has that. They just don't have it in the hardware. But the 7900 XTX does have 60% of the 9070 XT's performance in pure AI workloads. So worse, though, it seems FSR 4 is a hybrid CNN transformer model, and a transformer needs FP8. It is difficult to run them with Int 8. Again, only RDNA 4 has FP8. Still, the transformer part, though, could just be removed, leading to either less reconstructed fine detail or some artifacts in the detail. Although when we say artifacts, there should be less artifacts than there should be no more artifacts than DLSS 3 had anyways. Another option, though, is PSSR, which is Int 8 based, which RDNA 3 could do. AMD did tease working on a Project Amethyst with Sony, oddly, a couple of days ago, by the way, people. So I think this is probably the answer. So just don't expect full FSR 4 quality, but AMD should be able to do a whole lot better than FSR 3.1, even on its older cards. And I will say again, without going into detail, because without having more information on this, but anecdotally, I heard from somebody who believes they were able to use FSR 4 already on RDNA 3. Mm-hmm. And it did supposedly look vastly better than FSR 3.1. Well, not having as large of a performance boost is what we're kind of generally seeing with FSR 4. So I do think it is going to happen. It is interesting that it might use some modified version of PSSR.
Pisser.
The pisser, as we say. And yeah, I don't know. Dan, what do you think of FSR 4?
I mean, FSR 4 really did. I think this was where AMD really needed to get somewhere this generation versus Nvidia, where not challenging performance anymore in raster. We're just going into actually finally get close to parity with AMD Nvidia on their features. And I don't know, from what I saw, they were getting there. And now, instead of being, I would say, probably a full step to a step and a half ahead of AMD, Nvidia's only half a step ahead of AMD. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think functionally, like this is there's a bit of pixel counting involved. I think FSR 4 in a lot of ways is functionally like just as usable as DLSS 4, even if DLSS 4 does generate, generally speaking, better image quality.
It's interesting though, because it does seem like you really have to say generally now. Like people keep saying generally most of the time, but it seems like there's a lot of examples where FSR 4 is just beating DLSS 4 in image quality, depending on the type of game, like just straight up winning. And that's just so crazy. And it really surprised me because FSR 3.1 took forever to come out. I mean, good Lord, I don't know what was going on. And FSR 3 really fumbled a lot, I thought. This seems like the complete opposite.
Yeah, like as far as image quality goes, just looking through the reviews of it, the one thing AMD really does still need to improve upon is that I think Hardware Unboxed highlighted it well, is like when you have fences, like two fences against each other, there's like a lot of weird shimmering between them. That's the thing that AMD, I mean, that FSR has always. Stuff like that has always had that issue, and it's still there, albeit a lot better. But if they get past that issue with it, I don't know if I would notice any real difference while playing a video game.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe if I like slow it down and not necessarily even pixel count, but like slow it down and just slowly look at an image, maybe I could notice more details. But I think that's the big sore thumb for FSR 4 still.
Mm-hmm. Compressed AI Box writes and it says FSR 4 is impressive. I know, an extremely hot take, right? Coming from the perspective of someone who was heavily critical of FSR's image quality in the past, this is a night and day difference, especially for resolutions like 1440p. Do you think we are getting into the realm of the upscaler now not mattering for a majority of people? Not quite, but it might actually do more damage to NVIDIA's advantage than I thought it would before this launch. I know DLSS 4 can have an edge in certain cases, but FSR 4 also even has some wins over it as well. Edit. Also, does it change your value proposition of how much cheaper AMD has to be compared to NVIDIA? I believe hardware and boxed went from 20% to 15%, if I'm not mistaken. We kind of already touched on that, but I think a real question is do I think there needs to be a value proposition difference when NVIDIA's cards don't work?
I mean, and offer less RAM. Like,
absolutely.
If the 5070 had 16 gigabytes and had the same amount of value stock as the 9070, I don't know. I would still say probably buy the 5070.
I would,
but that's a very different difference. That's a different world. but so right now at the same price, I think it's at least a toss up.
Yeah. When it comes into VRAM. So I guess the difference for me really is it used to be 20%. I think it's 10. I think NVIDIA card 600, AMD card 550, say $50 because again, people keep forgetting AMD does have things NVIDIA doesn't. On the one side, you're getting Radeon Chill. Generally speaking, you tend to get better overclocking support on AMD as well. They have much better frame capping tech and stuff you can do in the drivers. Their drivers are easier to use, I still think, even with NVIDIA's new update. So you're getting advantages and features over here that NVIDIA does not have, to be clear. And then on top of that, it's like, okay, well, DLSS, sure. NVIDIA wins, slight ray tracing advantage. But also, I got to put some demerits over here of like, I don't know. I'm worried my card might be missing ROPs. There's apparently black screen issues. And with seeing how it almost becomes an alchemist-like argument of like, well, if NVIDIA's having this much of an afterthought for gamers with this generation, what's going to happen next gen? Is there going to be day one drivers for games? Do they even care anymore? Because what I'm seeing here is AMD cares and NVIDIA doesn't. So that'd make me worry about the future a little. So yeah, I mean, I'd say NVIDIA is worth more at the same level of performance, but I do think it's narrowing more than I thought it would this generation.
Yeah, I think this is really showing, I think, that AMD is serious in a generation that
no one else is.
in a generation that, like, had you been looking at it a few months ago, you could have been like you said, oh, is AMD getting out of gaming? No. If you're kind of looking at it not that closely, I see why that could be your takeaway, though. Mm-hmm. Where in reality, this might just be Polaris again, except way better.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yeah, we're just trying to bring good price performance, and also now on top of that, close to feature parity at least.
Deadeyes writes in and says, do we know for sure RDNA 3.5 won't support FSR 4? Seems to be the whole point of an 0.5 architecture is to pick and choose which parts of a new architecture you should backport to achieve some kind of benefit for the specific use case of the hardware. I would guess die space is the driving factor. It was. They wanted smaller dies, space usage for the APUs. But I'm interested to know if you think of others, given 3.5 is going into all these handhelds and laptops, would it have made a ton of sense to bring along whatever parts are required to make their shiny new and actually finally pretty good upscaler work? I know so far they have only talked about RDNA 4, but I could see this being because they have a lot of work to do to still get it to work on 3.5. What do you think? Feasible? Am I huffing opium? I don't think you are. Look, fundamentally, they can at least do what PSSR does. And so I think they can just take whatever they did with FSR 4, make it run on FP8, and then disable the things in the pipeline that don't, that don't require FP8, and I'm sorry.
Yeah. You
use Intade.
That don't require FP8 use, should have said.
Yeah. And Carbon Cry put a note, RDNA 3.5 does not have FP8. So it would have to use Int8 to do this, like PSSR. And again, let's remember here, RDNA 4 has got some chonky little compute units, people. I mean, what it's the 5080 has a die size 6% larger than the 9070 XT. If I look at, there's 64 compute units with the 9070 XT, and with the 5080 there are 84 SMs. So AMD's 6% smaller, and Nvidia has, what is that, whatever it is, like 30% more or something
like that.
Yeah, SMs. I mean, a compute unit is now bigger and stronger than an SM. That's kind of a big deal. And that's why they used RDNA 3.5 for APUs. They didn't want their compute units to be bigger than NVIDIA's. They wanted to still be able to fit 40 compute units in a small space. Most of the time, you don't need this stuff. So that's why they did that. But again, yeah, I think it's happening. They have to. My opinion is they have to have some FSR4 support thing for the previous gens, because they're going to be selling Strix and Phoenix and Hawkpoint rebrands for the next 5 years, and it would be ridiculous to not have some level of FSR for them.
Yeah, or they have to move to RDNA 4 on their APUs real quick, which I don't think is going to happen in 3 months. So.
No, they're going to keep using these for a very long time. So yeah. Let's see here. Story number 4. R9 9950X3D and 9900X3D launch this week. After a great RDNA 4 launch, AMD this week is releasing 2 new members to the wall of AM domination. These referencing the Amazon bestsellers. He sent me a picture that's just all AMD products right now on PC. These will be the long-awaited 9950X3D and 9900X3D. Sadly, only one core chiplet for both of them will have Vcache enabled yet again, as AMD continues this best of both worlds marketing strategy amid continued low availability of the 9800X3D. And with that low availability, I guess the decision is understandable, because, again, people, if they did 2 X3D chiplets, that would be, they can make 2 9800X3Ds for every 9950X3D. They're not selling the 9950X3D for double the price, so they can't afford to do that, given the shortages, because Intel isn't making chips people want. Well, not as desperately unavailable as the RTX 5000 series, there are still posts complaining about 9800X3D. So in that view, it makes sense. And it also makes one question what their stock is going to look like. AMD is also updating the chipset drivers to improve scheduling, so perhaps this launch will be smoother than that of their Zen 4 predecessor, perhaps even avoiding the dreaded Xbox game bar. As for performance, well, look, we know it, people. We know what the performance is going to be. It's going to have the same gaming performance as the 9800X3D, outside of a few outliers, and it will be able, and so it's going to crush Intel in gaming. Meanwhile, though, unlike with the Zen 4 models, Zen 5 can boost much higher, meaning that Zen 5's X3D flagships should be able to win gaming while also staying competitive with Intel in creative and productivity at the same time. So, yeah, and also I should say, by the way, that $700 for the 9950X3D, and it's $600 for the 9900X3D. So, yeah, 9900X3D, same price as 9950X. What do you think of these products, Dan?
I mean, basically what I thought of their Zen 4 counterparts. Like, it seems like they're going to have fewer launch issues, which good. AMD maybe launch things with not a ton of issues like you love to do. And yeah, 9950X3D, I guess get it if you... Yeah, I guess I would recommend that one more than last generation, because it seems like there will be fewer sacrifices.
The scheduling and the higher boost clock, the scheduling improvements, the higher boost clocks. This seems now like I can recommend it to gamer creators. I can now.
Yeah, whereas last generation, I think I would have just said get the 7950X instead. If you're like, because if you're making money off of this, that's what you should prioritize, and you're sacrificing that a little bit if you get the X3D model. And then the 9900X3D, it's the same as the 9900X. I don't know. This is the dustbin of Zen 5.
I still don't think they should even bother making a 12-core variant. I don't get it, but I guess
once they have 12-core CCDs, bring them out, because I'm sure those will be great. But as it is,
yeah, I don't
just.
Again, I assume, this is something I've said a few times that people miss, is like, once I figured this out, or someone told me this, I thought it all kind of made sense, which is they use lower yields for the second chiplet on the 9950X and the 9900X or the 7950X, so on and so forth in the past, both so that the TDP isn't double what the other, like the single CCD ones are, because they'll just clock them lower so that you can, add the extra 8 cores maybe, but not add double the TDP. But it is also just getting rid of bad yields. And so the reason AMD makes a 9900X3D is they do have some 6-core X3D yields, and that would either need to be like a $350 product, or they can put one bad yield of a 6-core next to it and now sell it for $600. That's the only reason AMD makes these. I still think they're kind of overpriced though. Like I still think it should probably be less than the 9950X. Or I don't know. I guess the same price makes sense. It's just, it's always going to be a weird product. So that one aside, 9950X3D, easy to recommend if you have the money, I guess, and you do productivity stuff. But I don't know that we have much else to say about this. I mean, the exciting one was the 9800X3D. That's when we saw the performance. We know what it's going to be already.
As usual, I think the 16 core wins in some application in some games and loses to others versus the 8 core.
Yeah, but there's less outliers this time because but again, it's like, if all you're doing is gaming, don't bother. And I still stand by, if you're mostly just worried about the creator stuff, nobody's going to put a 9950X in their system, turn on a game and go, why am I only getting 30 frames a second? So I still lean towards saying, if you're a creator, just get a 9950X, unless there's a professional app that uses the Vcache for something, which there are some. But like, I still think gamer creator with money, I can now kind of recommend it. I couldn't last gen. But if you're, I think even someone like me, I'd probably just go with a 9950X, because I just think it's going to crush the performance anyways in gaming. All right, let us now move on to story number 5. Jessie is excited that it's finally spring. She's excited to run around and jump in the yard. And you know what? I think this sponsor here will also make you jump for joy, and that is cdkeyoffer.com. cdkeyoffer.com is a long-term sponsor of Moore's Law Z that provides something I think the PC gaming community just needs, and that's reasonable pricing on Microsoft software. But they have other things too. They have games and other products that you can check out. And the reason we've worked with them so long is they are good to us, and they've been good to the community for pretty much the entire life of Moore's Law is Dead. And so I recommend you support someone that supports this channel. And you know what? If you want to, make sure you use offer code BrokenSilicon to save 25% on all Microsoft software, and Die Shrink to save 3% on everything else on the website. Again, using those offer codes helps the channel, and it also helps you save money on something that is already much more fairly priced than you can get elsewhere. Again, support Moore's Law is Dead at cdkeyoffer.com today. First Krackan APU reviews are out. Handheld and mini PC YouTuber ETA Prime got his hands on an AMD AI 350 APU and an ASRock mini PC. This is the first hands-on with Krackan point. And not really a full review, but still, the APU did seem to perform well, with 50 to 60 frames per second at 1080p in more demanding games. Cyberpunk 2077 hovering close to 60, and Spider-Man 2 around 90 with frame-gen, and easily clearing 60 FPS in less demanding titles like Doom Eternal, Fallout 4, and Forza Horizon 5. I combined the words. Power also doesn't look bad, with total system power of 57 watts averaging in gaming. And this is a mini PC, remember, not optimized for efficiency or battery. And it had slow 5600 mega transfer memory. So it seems Krackan Point could open up 1080p 60 gaming to dirt cheap laptops. Not only is the chip smaller and cheaper, but a laptop using it also won't need battery to be as big as for Strix Point, or the cooling to be as strong. So yeah, it seemed like it did kind of trade blows with Hawk Point, although maybe a little weaker, but it was using slower memory. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. I think this is kind of what we were hoping it would be. Hawk Point performance, smaller die, but now you have a modern neural engine. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it looked impressive. Pair this with some faster RAM. Pretty cool.
That's the test that I'm going to be interested in seeing, is if the faster RAM helps that much, because we already saw with Strix Point that the 12 and 16 compute unit models perform pretty similar to each other a lot of the time. They probably need more bandwidth. It would not surprise me if this is actually a closer matching of bandwidth to performance.
Oh, I see what you mean.
You know, like, it's still 128-bit, so what are you getting, like 30% less bandwidth? Okay, well, it has half the compute units. I think this is a very well optimized system. Yeah, especially because like I wonder like Hawkpoint with 56 mega transfer memory or slower, like if it actually isn't faster because it needs more bandwidth because it does 12 compute units.
Hmm.
But I don't know if you have anything else to say about this. I thought it was worth mentioning. This is what we thought it would be. It's Hawkpoint performance for less.
8 compute units gets you a lot these days, I guess.
I know
It's
funny.
a 1080p. It's a 1080p low settings card, but still.
But still, I mean, it excites me because if this is the standard of $500 laptops, then devs can just stop worrying about the junk stuff out there.
Yeah, I know.
And anyone can play a game. Again, 1080p 60. I know 720p isn't what people want, but it is playable. I have played games on my tablet in 720p, and that means any AAA game 720p 60 should do fine.
And yeah, I did think it was funny, like watching that review, like for Doom Eternal, one of the games he tested. It definitely looks last gen, but you know, this is an 8 compute unit
last gen
graphics card,
but with 60 frames a second.
Yeah,
which is very much so not last gen. TMC Payton writes in, howdy, Tom. I have a 140 watt 3070 laptop. When will an APU launch that is a performance upgrade over that? I'm tired of 8 gigabytes of VRAM and battery life, but I'm willing to wait for more performance. So it depends what you mean by APU. I would say Strix Halo is already there for sure. But I don't know if that's a huge upgrade. Well, no, it would be pretty big. 3070 to 4070 was huge. So I would say Strix Halo already does that. And Medusa Halo is going to make this look like a last-gen laptop easily in performance. Having said that, are you talking about a standard APU? I mean, what would a 3070 laptop be around? Probably like what, 4060 laptop performance? Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think Medusa Point's going to match that. I will say this, though.
Maybe whatever's after Medusa Point.
Yeah, I think maybe what's after their Medusa Point. But, I will say this. And this is something that this big spiel I had when I reviewed Hawkpoint. It's already good enough that the usability makes me, I just finally got rid of my 2060 laptop, by the way. Stripped out all the RAM and the components I might use in the future and threw it away. But I mean, look, guys, the 2060 is like 50% to double the performance of Hawkpoint. In some games, it was closer than you'd think, which is funny, but it was mostly vastly stronger. I don't regret going from a 2060 to an a 780M Hawkpoint edition. And I would suggest, look, if you're tired of the VRAM issues and bad battery life, and honestly, there's more driver problems when you have 2 graphics cards inside of a laptop. I have to say that I think you'd already probably enjoy Strix Point more. Like my experience.
Yeah, maybe.
It's already probably much better right now. So I don't know if you want to get some expensive $2,000, $3,000 Halo laptop, but at a minimum, I think you'd probably be happy now. But Medusa Point, I think you won't look back. I think it'll be more than enough performance. All right. Well, speaking of all of these points in Halos, let us move on to story number 6. More Zen 6 Medusa Halo specs leaked. So this came out in the middle, I believe, of the podcast episode with Hubwood, which you guys can all check out. I got an update from a source on the specs of Medusa Halo while we were talking. And because we were talking at that time also about Medusa Halo, I was like, let's just throw a leak into this. So in that, we already know that it has 12 core chiplets, meaning going up to 24 cores. What I was told during that recording is that they're going from 40 to 48 compute units with Medusa Halo, so 20% more, which isn't crazy. But then they're also going from 256 to 384-bit, which is a massive uplift in bandwidth. My understanding, by the way, I'll say now too, is that is LPDDR6, so that would also be clock faster. I'm saving some of the other details I'm hearing that are very exciting for probably a more proper leak that I'll cross-reference with more sources. But yeah, I mean, only 20% more compute units, but it sounds like they might be doubling bandwidth this time around. So I think that's incredibly exciting. Medusa Halo will be a decent upgrade. And as long as this launches first half of next year, this would be, right now they have something that's probably around a 5060 laptop that isn't even out yet and actually has ROP issues as well. We'll get to that in a second. But because I believe Nvidia will still be on Blackwell when Medusa Halo launches, yeah, I mean, I think they could leap from 5060 competitor to 5070 Ti or 5080 laptop competitor in an APU. And I just think that's really exciting.
I mean, yeah, depending on where final performance ends up. Yeah, I don't know. You're only 20% more. That's a pretty big jump for APUs in a single generation, and 50% more bandwidth.
Well,
I don't know.
50% more bus width, also faster, maybe double the bandwidth.
Yeah, true. Yeah, this could easily be like 40% stronger, which that would be a huge uplift. That's a very respectable generational uplift for an iGPU. And then, I don't know, 24 cores. I don't know what that could end up being for CPU performance. 50% more?
Oh, at least I'd say.
Like,
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah, so this is going to be a monster. And it's just interesting that AMD's already just 2 gens into Halo, almost done being able to compete with Nvidia across all of laptop just with GPU tiles. Like they have the IO die tile for Medusa Point. Then there's the 256-bit tile that will compete, where it competes now. That will compete with like the 5060, 5070. And then they'll have the 384 tile for 5070 Ti, 5080 laptops. And then I would suggest above that, just bundle RDNA 4 with, honestly, Krackan would be the best price performance mix match. But
Sure.
But they'll probably pair that with Strix Point or something, or whatever they have. Then
Yeah.
probably Krackan next or whatever.
Yes, or whatever is out at this point, because there's also Medusa Point, which that will probably be mostly paired with itself, I guess, or not paired with a GPU, but
that one they'll probably pair with GPUs. Yeah.
This continues to be that thing like that everybody's been waiting for. I mean, I think this could really be mid-range performance if it actually comes out on time, because that's the problem with like Strix Halo, that it came out so much later than we were expecting. It kind of drifted from it being a mid-range card to it. Now it's
mid-range, if they still call 8 gigabyte cards mid-range in laptop, which they do, but not a mid-range killer. It was just what we thought it could be if it would have launched against. Yeah, if it would have launched against the 4070 halfway through that generation, that would have been amazing. And that's what makes this more exciting for me. If it does, again, I don't know for sure, but if Medusa Halo does launch by the first half of next year, this is AMD actually launching into the gen when we want them to with a stronger APU.
Yeah, and if that's what they end up doing, this could be the Blackwell or whatever's after Blackwell mid-range killer at laptop.
Rune Knight writes in, do you think it would make sense for AMD to keep producing Strix Point and Strix Halo in the long term and rebrand them for cheaper offerings up to the point that you can, example, get a Strix Halo gaming laptop for $1,000 to $1,200 and Strix Point cheap laptops in the $500 range? I don't think on that one. Or do you think there are more cost-effective ways to achieve similar results with new designs? So I don't know about the rebranding thing. I think Medusa Halo is just going to replace it. There's not that much of a need to. Strix Point I could see rebranding, but Strix Halo, I don't know why you would rebrand that.
I feel like lower into the product stack is the more and more likely what will be rebranded.
Like
so I could easily see Krackan being rebranded for a generation.
Yeah, because it's doing something with a very small amount of die space that makes sense. Whereas with Strix Point to Medusa Point is just going to be in the same pricing tier. So I don't know why we would bother to make Strix Point anymore. I
don't get why you would keep making Strix Halo once Medusa Halo is on the market.
Now, and this is, again, a conversation that came up when I was talking to Hubwood, but like there's this assumption out there that, I think there's an assumption out there with some people that like Strix Halo always needs to be in expensive laptops just because the first one it lapped with the Asus ROG Flow 13 is expensive, but that thing's always cost at $2,500. So AMD isn't making it more expensive. That's always what they were charging for this. Meanwhile, we have Framework selling a Strix Halo desktop. If you add up the cost of the components, it starts at $1,100, and I believe a 128 gigabyte model is like $2,000 or less. So that's not that expensive sounding to me. It's just right now, and this is something we said for like 2 years, right? We've been linking this. Like this Halo starts inexpensive laptops, but fundamentally there is no reason that it needs to cost more than the competition long term. The die of the IO die is comparable to like a 4070s die, I believe, or something like that, or maybe 80. And then there's a CPU chiplet. But then you also don't have to add a whole other CPU. There's no reason eventually there can't be 8-core plus 32 CU Strix Halo laptops for $1,200. I don't think there is. Like, there's no reason you couldn't.
Sure.
Like the cost is the
No,
same. It's just that's not the focus now. So forget rebranding. Could happen in less than a year if someone wants to mass produce like Lenovo a gaming focused variant of Strix Halo.
yeah, I mean, I think that's all just dependent on OEMs. Like, well, what can we put this in? Because sure, you can put it in a $1,200 laptop and make money, but if you can make a $2,500 laptop, that's probably at least what's going to come out first.
Mm-hmm. AI Hollow Knight writes in and says, given how supply constrained TSMC's 5 and 4 nanometer and 3 nanometer nodes are and how free 6 nanometer is, could Zen 6 desktop IO die still be using 6 nanometer, or will it mostly be for 3D stacking on AMD side? Well, we know there's like some 3D stack stuff of like the interposer die, but whatever it is, the bridge die, as I call it.
Mhm.
But it's not like they're just stacking all over 6 nanometer or something like that. But so look, I don't know what the IO die's node is, but I think it's 3 nanometer or 2. Like, and at a minimum, I think it's going to be 4. I don't think it's 6 nanometer. This doesn't seem right.
No, I mean, especially with the how they're changing the design. It seems like the IO die is the design of the IO die is becoming more and more integral to the variations.
Yeah, like
in the
neural
designs.
engines and more, and they actually have graphics in them now. And Medusa is a family from desktop to high-end, low-end laptop at the same time. So whatever they're using, they're probably using the same node for all of them. And from what I'm hearing, it's like 3 nanometer probably for the IO die. You're not going to design a 6 nanometer one for desktop, I don't think. So now, when it comes to supply, what if they have like a Zen 5 Plus that uses the 6 nanometer IO die and they can just pump that for the low end or something? Then I could see it happening.
Sure. Yeah.
All righty. Let us finally move off of all of these AMD stories here to story number 7. Panther Lake potentially delayed. All right, quoting from analyst Ming-Chi Kuo, according to my latest industry survey of PC and NB vendors, brands, ODMs, and EMS, Intel has postponed the mass production timeline for Panther Lake from early September to mid Q4 2025. Sounds like another Meteor Lake situation. Several key points warrant attention. 1, given the typical 2 to 4 week gap between finished products, Panther Lake notebooks may not become widely available until 26, implying that Intel will miss the crucial year-end holiday sales season in 2025, and the second half of 2025 revenue and profit will face downside risks. 2, well, Intel has only publicly stated that Panther Lake is scheduled for mass production in second half of 2025, keeping this delay within their communicated timeline. Such a decision would not be made without significant production issues. This delay will impact their revenue and profits, and most importantly, organizational morale and supply chain trust. When it rains, it pours. It's been pouring at Intel so long that they look doomed to go underwater. According to a Taiwanese analyst, as I just quoted, the new savior of Intel, a doomed hope will be delayed. Still, launching within its wide launch window, but at its very end, leading to real availability of Panther Lake starting in 2026. I don't know. I'm just going to cut off the quotes here and just say, reading this sounds exactly like Meteor Lake to me.
Yeah.
I think it will be better performance, relatively speaking, but it's the same thing. It's like Meteor Lake gets delayed and delayed. They pretend it launched on December 31st. I mean, that's insulting to our intelligence, Intel. December 31st, and calling it a 2020, what do they say, 3 product.
Yeah.
This is this just kind of sounds like Meteor Lake's issues all over again. Hopefully the performance is there. But I say relatively speaking, it should be maybe somewhat competitive with Zen 6 core for core. I was hoping that with Meteor Lake. Who knows?
Yeah, this just seems to be Intel's MO more and more often is pretend a product launches and then kind of delay it for months.
Yeah, I don't have much to say. I just saw this. I thought it had to be a major story because it's like, how many times have we said this? They can't keep having this happen. They can't keep having this happen. It looks like it might happen again.
Yeah, and all I've got to say is, despite the some of the hate, Nvidia hate this episode, I enjoy talking about AMD and Nvidia way more than Intel.
Yeah, it's waiting for that good news to happen.
Yep.
Jensen Wang writes in, yet again, very Jensen-y episode. With DELL now as a partner with AMD, AMD has finally done it. They've won over Intel's best friend that money could buy. How much money do you think they paid DELL? Nothing. I think DELL just wants a reliable partner.
Yeah, I mean, if Intel were still like just launching products on time, who knows? Maybe they could still have a good partner at Dell, but
I mean,
why?
I'll let the cat out of the bag a little bit here. This was like I guess it was like 2 years ago now or something. I did talk to people at Dell at the time. They were furious with what happened with Meteor Lake. They were
Oh, sure.
absolutely furious. And knowing how mad they were then, I can't imagine if they are hearing Panther Lake's getting delayed now. We also have seen publicly, and I've heard behind the scenes as well, that they're switching to AMD. This is probably why. They're like, you're never doing this to us again. They said, we're going to do it again. They're like, bye. Like, that's what I think is going on here. Coal Addict writes in, with the CHIPS Act getting canceled just to spite the previous administration, can Intel even survive without selling off parts of itself? No. They're going to have to sell off parts of their company. I think it's funny. Daniel Nenny is the one who said this to me in an episode, and then it started coming out a month later. But it might be Broadcom comes in to swoop up Intel, like, and just provide good, like, kill the board and have better leadership, because apparently they have very, very good leadership over there, which is really what Intel needs.
Yes, they seem like a headless organization right now.
But yeah, I don't have anything else to say about this subject, I don't think. Let us now move on to the final wrap up. These are, of course, the stories that did not, we think, warrant their own 5 to 10 minute conversation, but we do think were worth mentioning. There's the new GNR. Granite Rapids chips are coming out here. I flagged this for you, Dan. Did you look at this? Any takeaways from Granite Rapids?
Not many. I mean, they are using a lot of tiles. That's about it.
Yeah, I think the takeaways I saw were basically Intel is managing to be very competitive below 80 cores. And that's all that people really care about right now in HEDT, and actually in a lot of server settings. And so actually for that use, look, AMD's crushing them in high core counts. In fact, I think I did hear that one of the reasons Dell is switching too is because they're so mad at how much power Granite Rapids uses when you go to 128 cores or whatever. But below 80 cores, it seems competitive. It just looks really expensive for what you're getting.
And yeah, if they still can't compete on price, who really cares that much versus AMD? Like, sure, AMD, maybe you could overblow the higher core counts importance, but if Intel is just doing these huge bloated designs for everything, they're still not competitive.
Mm-hmm. Jensen Wing writes in, with Intel managing to make 4 different chip tiles for the newest big core Xeon CPUs, only 2 of which are reused in packaging, when will Intel figure out the point of chiplets, tiles, is to reuse them across products, thus lowering costs? I don't know.
Never.
Like, they just want the prettiest PowerPoint pictures, and they just want to put 500 different types of tiles. I mean, when I heard Sapphire Rapids use 2 different tiles because they had to be a different angle to have 4 go together, what the hell is happening? Like, why wouldn't you design it so you could just use one exact same tile 4 times? Like, I don't know. They're only doing it to give it more. They're not doing it to save money, and that's why their margins are in the tank, and they're going out of business. Like, they are, they're not literally, but they're trending that way. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't get Intel's design philosophy. I don't know if Intel even gets Intel's design philosophy. It's just, I don't know. It's like that German engineering philosophy of why use one part when you can use 7.
Yeah. All right. Next story. RTX 50 laptops are missing ROPs too. And I actually I was told by, I won't put a quote on screen here, I guess, but I was told behind the scenes by somebody, I want to say it was a week ago, it was right before this story started breaking publicly, that at a major retailer, they were like, hey, send back the laptops to all the OEMs. Like, so it's not just that, like, some of them have problems. I was told it seemed like it was a recall, like a silent recall. They don't want to say they had to do a recall for bad press, but that's how bad and pervasive the missing ROPs in their laptops issue was. A retailer had to say, okay, I guess let's go get all of our Asus laptops and send them back to Asus, MSI to MSI, and they had to go do that.
Yeah, I know we talked about this on the last episode about missing ROPs and how Nvidia's insisting that this is like a single early shipment quality control problem.
It's
I don't know
all
if
a
I
black
believe
hole.
that.
Again, it's
I
like
don't
when we say like how much more would you pay for Nvidia over AMD at the same performance? I'd say probably 10%, but I have to say probably now because I'm like, is it going to work? Like,
yeah, and we do need to wait, I think, a couple months. Like, is this just a manufacturing issue across this entire series? Like, there's just going to be 8 missing ROPs sometimes for some reason?
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure that will be a developing story and we'll eventually hear what's going on. Nvidia announcing 5060 Ti 16 and 8 gigabytes allegedly, 5060 8 gigabytes. And I'll add on here. It's not, I don't have the link to it, but I saw that there's probably going to be a 5058 gigabyte GDDR6. I thought about making this a major story. I don't think so. We've kind of been talking about the 5060 and 8 gigabytes and what's going to happen for a while now. So I don't see a point in making it its own story, but I don't know, Dan. What do you think about 16 and 8 gigabyte 5060 Ti again, supposedly?
Just make the 16 gigabyte model. Like, I don't know. don't do this bullshit, whatever. They're going to try to charge for an 8 gigabyte card, like $400 again or something.
Yeah. It's just so weird. They keep doing this every gen to me.
I know. Like, but the 5070 has 12 gigabytes, so there always has to be that weird discrepancy in their lineup. I don't know why that keeps happening, but you know what? Keep doing it, I guess, Nvidia.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'll say is there's rumors, I believe, circulating that there might be a lot of 5060s. The thing I suggested, 5060 flood, where they just give up on the high end because they don't care because of AI. It seems more and more likely that's what's going to happen. Although, until it's confirmed, we shouldn't say we're sure about that because there sure as heck wasn't a 5070 flood.
Yeah, and I would rather talk about it in 2 weeks when things are more sure, because I don't know, things seem to be moving fast, so this might be completely different 2 weeks from now.
True.
When this is supposedly going to be announced, or when this should have been announced by then.
RX 9060 XT, there's been a flurry of these leaks. I'm not going to go into every little one because if you ask me, I leaked Navi 44 was 128-bit, 32 compute units most likely, and you know, the performance it was targeting a long time ago. I don't think any of these leaks coming out now are actually new, in my opinion. But one thing I was hoping is that the 9060 XT would get a 16 gigabyte variant and no 8 gigabyte. Seems like it will get both 8 gigabyte and 16 gigabyte options. I guess I'll say if the 8 gigabyte model is $250, fine. But I think it'll be $300.
Yeah.
Don't you? I mean, am I wrong? You agree?
No, I probably. And I agree with you on like just the value perspective. At this point, an 8 gigabyte card shouldn't cost $300.
Now, even 300, I think, is too much. So I don't have much to say. I'm excited to see the 9060 XT. Of course, I already leaked that it should be launching in April in another piece of content. And it's not that I don't think an 8 gigabyte model can have merit, because there are some people that just game in 1080p and maybe don't care. But I don't know. I just think unless it's 250 or even 200, it doesn't make sense. And that's why I go, why make an 8 gigabyte model? Save that for laptop if you ever make any of those. Or putting into mini PCs like with Minis Forum, you know, that type of thing. And just sell the 7600 XT for 250. Like, I don't see the point in an 8 gigabyte card. It's not enough, man. It's getting close to being as bad as the 6500 XT. It's not that bad, but we're getting there.
Yeah, and to me, it is just the 7600. I don't know, until you can just manufacture something cheaper than the 7600 with 8 gigabytes. I don't know. Just sell that indefinitely for, hopefully 200. I don't know what the 7600 is at in this crazy world we're living in right now, but I don't know. Just 8 gigabyte cards that are expensive are stupid these days.
Now, the next story was going to be that Mind Factory might be headed towards bankruptcy or insolvency, which, you know, in America doesn't really affect us, but I know they're like the micro center, some people say, of Germany and of many European countries. I'll say video cards deleted their post. So I don't know what that means, but I did, again, that's why this isn't getting a major story, but I do think it is notable. We do have to note that there are rumors Mind Factory is financially in trouble. And there'd be a lot of people who would be sad about that if that happened.
Oh, yeah, that would suck.
Also, Dan, you included this as being part of the wrap-up. I have not watched the trailer yet. And of course, because it's Kojima, the trailer's freaking 10 minutes long. But Death Stranding 2, June 26th.
Yeah, I haven't watched the trailer yet either. I actually stumbled across this while looking if there were any other things to add to the wrap-up. And I was like, oh, June 26th. That's way sooner than I was expected. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I'm not that surprised. It looked like it was basically done. I guess I don't know if I had a strong opinion on when I thought it would come out, but I don't know. There's not that much time that needs to be spent on this. Just me and Dan really liked the first Death Stranding, and we are very excited for the sequel.
And if you haven't played it yet, go play it.
Give it a chance.
The first one.
Give it a chance. Yeah. I'm surprised how much I liked it. But I actually don't have any wrap-up reader mails here. So, I mean, I think we had a lot of reader mails for the other stories. I think, Dan, this will just be where we end the episode.
And just when it's $10. The Death Stranding director's cut is $10 right now.
On Steam? Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Go get it, guys. Come on. Go get it. Go get it.
Oh, wait. Never mind. That's the upgrade.
Okay. I was going to say, are you sure that's not the upgrade?
Yeah. Okay. Never mind, people.
Don't get it.
It's still $40. Don't get it now. Screw you, Kojima.
No, we still recommend it. Worth $40. But
damn Google summaries.
Oh, is that what it was?
Over again. Yeah.
AI wins again. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you for the correction, Dan. Thank you for joining me today. And everybody, once again, I'll do the spiel. Make sure that you are subscribed to the Moore's Law Said YouTube channel. Make sure you are ringing the bell button to not miss upcoming content. We've got more Medusa Halo, RDNA 4 Ultimate leaks that I'm working on right now. Ancient Gameplays, I believe, will be the next guest to talk about FSR 4, which he has tested extensively. That should be fun. You're not going to want to miss it. But then also support us on Patreon. We've got multiple interviews there. A developer talking about why the PhysX issue is a major problem. Interviews with people at Micro Center that were there. Like, this was a lot of work and, frankly, a lot of journalism. You're not just supporting me, you're supporting Dan. As you can see on screen here, this person, you're supporting him. You're supporting Gerard, you're supporting Carbon Cry, you're supporting John Philippe, who renders leaks so I can leak things to you safely to protect sources. All of this costs money. We cannot do this without our patrons. You'll get access to a Discord. Ask us like Ancient Gameplays questions and so many other pieces of content that are never have any ads in them, just even at the lowest $2 tier. So please join us there. And otherwise, I think this is where I start rambling. You could argue I already am. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a good week, everybody.
Goodbye, everyone.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carbon Cry and Kerry No Sugata as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About/Support page. In the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Kerry No Sugata as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and Jean-Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong. We love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guests questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit, and give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels: Brad Medlin, Drita Foles, ZGist, Daniel D, Dink, Nicholas Buckner, Aaron Close, Jan Rauner, Daniel Hyde, MJB1, GZ Ziggy, Toka, SNES Chalmers, Jem Ferreira, Valcom Alev, Jensen Wang, Gregor Zachar, Sarcastro, Chris Trick, Evan Dingle, Compressed AI Blocks, Hal Booma, Shredburb, Sammy Malas, Jordan Simkovic, The Boss Haas, Crescentine, Jonathan, Franco Frederic, Jake223, Nithra Zink, Jake Martin, Zlicky, Meat and Pork, Tim Rod, Ian Clifford, Travis Gooding, Gamers Unite, Mad, Zoot Taylor, Greg, Michael McGee, Patty Cakes, Stephen Coates, Amiable Chief, Mark Mitchell, Tommy Aisha, James Anderson, Mark Raidmaker, Cole Addict, Cameron, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Michelle Pell, Mai Sharona, Hexapuma, Winwang, Reginald Ari, Teak Autumn, Winstar, Corey Leonard, James I, Raider, Little Germany, Shay, Milton, JSMMH, Melodic Warrior, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, Mac Daffy, Stephen Dick, Justin Bustle, Austin Haggerty, Jofit, Brian Scanlon, Arlen, Jansen, and Gima. Joseph Kelly, Slushbaugh, Himsa Gung, Tails2299, Sisyphos7771, Brian Wright, The Forbidden Juice, RB Racer, Jeffrey Gentleman, Alex Vega, Dr. J Mad, Freedy, Michael Cozy, John Swin, Crystal Joe, Albergun, Keekum, Solarize80, Thalo215, Sprutnik, Brian P, Hudat42, Cornster671, Penta Winter, Hal Richard, Omega Doge, Mr. Tiger, John Wick, Boomstick, Penguins AI Love, Penguins Love AI, Hugo, Ander, Kiwi, Curie King 3, Nixus Mania, Porcelain Oats, State Farm Snakes, Sakosha Raichi, Bulls, 37 by 73, Armand Vaktura, Jonathan Harris, Kalen Reichel, Smash Axley, Angel of Cake, and of course, as always, thank you to Sahara for the music.